Just a few hours away from Monday Night Football, Week 4 of the NFL, thankfully, gave us a 2-game slate here. It's a beautiful sports day for those of you who are sitting at home, maybe hiding out from the waters from the hurricane, or like I am here in Atlanta, staying indoors because we've been told to due to a chemical spill. And we're not sure what chemicals are in the air, but it's not safe to be outside. Anyway, happy Monday. And as we learned this weekend, stats are for losers. Stats are for losers. Thank you to Raheem Morris, head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, decided not to target his tight end at all and simply deploy his backup running back because you're just trying to win one game. And many people thought that when he said stats are for losers, he was talking about Farhan Zahidi, who got fired from the San Francisco Giants today for one of the dumbest organizational ideologies over the last couple of seasons. But we'll talk about all that. Go ahead, say hello to us in the chat. We are going to be here talking about this 2-game slate. And let us know, who was your dumbest play yesterday? Who's the play yesterday that you are kicking yourself the most about? I'll start for me personally. I got onto this. I thought it was a great spot. I was looking a little bit too much in the rearview mirror and not focused enough on who was on the other sideline because I went very heavy on Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison Jr. Looked like it was going to start well, first touchdown, but then Cliff Kingsbury, he knew exactly how to tie up his former quarterback, and the rest of the game was all Washington. But we're here. We're going to break this down. I'm with JSU and the Chiquita Banana. JSU, how are you doing on this Monday, and how was your Sunday afternoon?
Looking at Tony, looking at you, and then myself, and then you talk about Tony looking like a banana. I mean, it's just a great start to my Monday.
He didn't even crack a smile there.
No, he held it. I respect it, though. He held it. It was hard, though. You could tell because he was like, his lips were like clenched together. You know, JT, when someone's doing that, they're trying to hold back from saying something. It's killing him right now, too, that he can't just come back with something witty. I'm sure he will at some point in this show. Big T's not one for just coming straight at you. He'll find a way to just work it in. As we go throughout the show, he'll find a way to get you back, JT. So just be careful. But my Sunday was good. Sunday was good. If we're talking about plays that I regret, I'll tell you right now, I regret even listening to any coach from the Chicago Bears tell me about Roschon Johnson being the main guy there or getting worked in with, the first team number 1 touches and all that stuff, seeing what he's got. Because you know what he got, JT? He got like 7 touches to DeAndre Swift's 3,000. Okay. So I don't want to hear any more. I know we got lucky with Roschon because he got in the box and he was so cheap. So I will take being lucky over good. But man, is that the last time I trust anything that Bears coaching staff says. And somehow DeAndre Swift goes out there and he looks okay for finally after weeks of us being like Swift. Nobody plays. I'm sure he was like 1% owned maybe and stuff like that. I bet. I don't know. Was he on the Millie Maker winner? I didn't even look.
No, the Millie Maker. Yesterday was one of those weird days. Of course, he had in Cincinnati, Chase Brown gets in the box twice. He had a lot of just. I mean, you had Nico was the guy that there were 2 chalk plays, Nico and Deontay Johnson, that turned out to be good plays. Everything else, I mean, Breece Hall, nothing. Anyone on the Jets, nothing. Anyone on the Patriots, nobody played those, nothing. The Jaguars guys, it was Kirk that you needed. So it was
Brian Thomas. No, don't forget my boy Brian Thomas.
He was
good.
He was okay.
And Trevor Lawrence missed him on a absolute sick double move. He was wide open for another touchdown. He could have easily had even a bigger day, but he's nasty. The Jags they're all terrible except for Brian. He's the only one that's real in that offense. Everyone else sucks. Brian Thomas, the only real one.
I think a lot of that's a product of Doug Peterson. We'll talk about that as we go on. But I do think he's done the same thing when he's had good running backs in Philadelphia, right? I mean, Etienne, no, we're going to give it to Tank Bigsby. We're going to move it around. I mean, Kirk has been pretty good. But Big T, I'll bring you in here and welcome you. How was your Sunday? Obviously, a 2-game slate here tonight. What's your biggest regret? I also went pretty heavily on Cam Akers. Of course, And I looked at it right before lock, and I saw it was at that 5.5 number that we were talking about last week, where the Texans were favored by 5.5, but the Jags looked so bad. I said, this has to be a spot where Cam Akers is going to get right and going to at least pay off that 5-3 tech. He was a worse play for me than Harrison Jr., and so it just was ugly. But how about you? How was your Sunday? What's your biggest regret from yesterday?
Yeah, that 5.5 number was good again yesterday with Jacksonville. I mean, they should have won that game. They were the better team most of the game, besides Trevor Lawrence just being so bad. If Trevor Lawrence was even halfway decent, they win that game, and it's that 5.5 number is powerful. My biggest miss, though, I mean, I was pretty on point except for freaking Kyler. I was with you. Like, Kyler just you couldn't survive that with Fields going for a bunch, with even a couple other guys that were in similar price points going for like 25. CJ went for 25. A couple other guys, too. I don't have the exact list. But a couple guys in that same price, you just couldn't survive Kyler. It was just – I still cash too, which makes it even worse some days like that. Like when you min cash and you're like a little bit ahead of the min cash and you got your quarterback just give you nothing, it almost makes it more tilting than not cashing, because you're like, man, if I could. And then you see some of the winners and it's like all your guys. You're like, my God, if I would have just played the Fields combo instead. And again, this happens every week. So I hate even talking about this because it could happen to anyone. Like, oh, if I played these two over these two, I would have won. Well, no shit. Of course you'd have won if your two worst guys turned into the two best. If I had Fields and friggin' Pickens over Kyler, and like, of course you would win. So I know I'm saying the same thing everyone said, but I was disappointed in Kyler. I couldn't be mad though, because I freaking loved that spot for him. He stunk. And you brought up a good point. They kind of knew some of his weaknesses. He just takes sacks that other guys don't take. He runs straight back, and like instead of getting out of the pocket, he just takes sacks, just falls over. It's just very frustrating. But I felt like we were on a lot yesterday, but you got to hit everything these days to get all the way to the winner's circle. I don't mind any of the decisions. Good day bets wise too. 10-3, I think, for the bets members in there. I always enjoy picking bets winners even more than DFS, just because I know there's so many casual people that like to bet the stuff. So I always take more pride in picking some winners on that side of things.
You know, it's funny because I had Pickens in my main, I had Evans in my main, and at kind of like at 12:30, I was thinking, should I just go Fields? And I could have upgraded to Goddard. I could have maybe gotten up to Nico somewhere else. And I didn't do it. Like you said, those things happen every week. Jonathan Bresnan is in here saying Najee and Akers were the easiest fades. Okay, you must have won the Millie yesterday, because I think Najee we're going to talk about Taysom Hill. So let's go ahead, because this was one of the more disgusting things yesterday.
I had to screen share this because fucking Big T, he doesn't say anything, which is just the asshole that he is. He doesn't even say anything. But his play of the day gets 2 friggin' touchdowns early in that game, also gets hurt. Doesn't come back after halftime. I think he had 14 at halftime or something like that, whatever he had. And then I see the screenshot. Shout out to the Bumpsta in our Discord. This dude put $400 on Taysom, 2 touchdowns. I mean, shout out to this dude, because Big T, he must really love you, because he literally put that 400 on Taysom. Most likely, he said at Big T GOAT. So most likely it was because of your conviction of Taysom Hill as your favorite play. You don't even friggin' say it. So I had to shout out you and the Bumpster for you. I don't even know if you saw this. I'm assuming you saw this screenshot in the Discord, but I mean, friggin' amazing. $400 to win $14K. And shout out to the Bumpster. That was awesome. I had to show that.
That's a good bet, too. Like, if he doesn't get hurt, they went down to the 1 at least one more time. I mean, it's always been the good thing of Taysom. When you get inside the 5, you know he's getting those high leverage carries. And I was tilted, though, because someone on friggin' Twitter had me so pissed that they were like saying I jinxed Taysom or some bullshit on Twitter. I was laughing so hard. I'm like, he was my play of the day. What do you want from me? Somehow I got him injured by gloating that he scored twice. What, am I not supposed to be happy when he scores twice? How in the hell was I was so mad.
But that whole situation was
dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life.
So Taysom's back, right? So you're lower on Kamara. You're a little bit lower on the rest of the offense because you know that you're not really sure what the hell they're going to do.
Yeah.
And then he gets hurt, and then Kamara gets there anyway. So Kamara ends up with 25. Taysom gets the 2 scores. The Falcons win anyway, so Raheem Morris now thinks it's fine to ignore your top running back and completely ignore your athletic pass-catching tight end.
Fitz is the one we're done with, JT.
We were done with him. We were done with him 2 years ago. We were done with him in the Arthur Smith offense. And then it's like these coaches are so stubborn with the media because all preseason, all offseason, anyone that could ask a question was asking Raheem Morris. Obviously, you got to get Kyle Pitts the ball, right? And you can almost see this guy, right? Like, actually, no, I don't have to get Kyle Pitts the ball. I'll win it with Darnell Mooney. I'll win it with Tyler Algier. I'll win it with whoever the hell the third tight end is. So, and this is happening all across the league. We see guys not using their more talented, at least what appear to be their more talented players. And certainly it's happening in Jacksonville, all right? I mean, there's maybe no better example where you've got a guy that you drafted in the first round and like, oh no, let's continually, year after year, game after game, let's give him 25% of the snaps and bring in the second string. So very frustrating. And I think that's going to be the case, right? I mean, Tony, do you see this changing at any time? There are very few, like I try and make a note at the beginning of every NFL slate that I am looking at and saying, which teams have the trustable production? There's really very few of them right now.
And you got to just soak it in when it's there because, again, we talked about the first couple weeks of the years like preseason. Now we got to start dialing in before other people of these situations. And you just got to go with it. There's not many spots that you're going to love. And, I mean, you just need to take notes, which is why I always like doing the flowchart stuff, even though I like doing it for the members too. I like to look through the numbers just for my own head, just to see where the usage is going, see who gives up the use. It helps me. It helps my process. So, yeah, I like doing it. But now's the time, JT, though. You're right. Like 2-game slates, obviously we don't have a ton of these going forward. But
right.
These slates where you can really dial in on usage and stuff, it's just so important because you have those teams. The Falcons have to be number one, but there's a few other ones as you go through the list where you just can't expect anything, honestly. They'll just like Bijan. How's he not? It's crazy to me. It's insane. So, yeah.
The Falcons, the Patriots are another team where they have a bunch of these minimum price guys. We've got a team on this slate that has a bunch of minimum price guys that we're not sure what the hell's going to happen. No one thinks they're going to score a lot. But if you pick out the right one, if you picked out Pop Douglas in the Showdown slate where that was your only Patriots player, you made a lot of money, right? So there is a value in finding those guys. But we've got a slate here where I would say 3 teams have a pretty condensed target tree. I will take a little step back in terms of Detroit because they have so many skill position players that can get it done, whether it's Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams. You've got Gibbs and Montgomery. Now Laporte is back, right? So that's 5 guys right there. You got to be careful because in the terms of how expensive these guys are and what the possibility is that you're going to get multiple of those in the optimal lineup. So we'll talk through all that. Terry, Uncle T, Pooh washed away in the hurricane. So she's not here. He's not here. He's kind of a non-gender being, right? The way that Quinn attacks him. But so we'll get started. We'll start with.
I want to bring up a point that since you made fun of my clothing, the Mets are now rallying against your grave because of that bad mojo.
They are. I didn't bring bad mojo. I mean,
you made fun of me. You came in hot, making fun of me right when I signed on. I was going to talk about how good your head looked. I was going to bring the good mojo, and you immediately made fun of me, called me Banana Man and all, Banana Boat.
I mean, come on. Have you left the house today?
I went to eat lunch.
Did no one comment?
I didn't have the hat on, to be fair. I had a normal hat. So it wasn't all yellow. I went yellow just for the show to like make it sink.
All right. So it was a little less garish when you went out to lunch because you just had the shirt and not the hat on.
I'm like JSU though. Now that you say it, I'm just gonna wear this like every day to lunch now with the hat. I'm gonna get like yellow short. I'm just gonna go all out on it.
That's how you do it, Tony. Own them out of spite. You got to do it. That's the JSU way right there.
Go right in there.
We talk way too much if you're starting to spite people like that, if that's the case. But I do love that. And JT, didn't I tell you it wasn't going to happen right away, but he was going to find a way to sneak it in there at some point, and he did. Just waiting for it.
I mean, I turned the screen right there, and I saw the Mets taking the lead. I didn't have to work for it.
By the way, too, I will say one other thing about our show before JT gets to this game. We did talk up Najee and fading him, and we didn't really like Najee on that show. I don't think we talked about Cam Akers. And by God, the Jaguar spot, I keep telling you guys every week, just play pass catchers, play passers, quarterbacks, receivers. They can stop the run. Don't play run, like just play the receivers. CJ Stroud had like 220 yards at halftime throwing the ball. It's literally the best spot for pass catchers and receivers. If they can put up any type of fight, those games will go to the moon the more and more this year goes. So I couldn't believe that game fell under the total, though. That was pretty insane to me. That was probably one of the wild unders I saw. I think it was 44.5, and it fell right at 44. I mean, man, the amount of missed opportunities, though, in that game were crazy. So just keep playing against that Jacksonville secondary. They are terrible, and they will continue to give up points.
So we will start now with the 7:30 game here. This is, and I guess the first game, right? The first game, we're kind of looking at it. You're like, yeah, but there's some reasons here why maybe it'll be a little bit more interesting than people think it's going to be, and we'll talk through that. Of course, everyone's focused on the second game, but we're going to start with this first game, JSU. Tennessee heads into Miami, 2.5-point favorites. This line has flipped towards Tennessee. The news that Huntley is starting at quarterback for Miami, which I think is probably a good thing. It's got to be better than Skylar Thompson. 37 total here. The line has come down by 9 for this game. And you've got Will Levis, you got Tyler Huntley, you have Mostert is questionable for Miami. And obviously the playmakers there, Tyreek, Waddle. What are you doing with this game? What are your thoughts here? I think most of the ownership is going to be on this second game. So there's definitely some ownership leverage that you can get by focusing on this game in the 2-game slate.
Yeah, it's really tough on this slate because obviously you've got, and this happens all the time, I swear, on these 2-game slates where you've got one game that is the clear bad game. It's the lower total game by a lot. It's, it's two worse teams by a good amount. I won't say by a lot, but a good amount. And offenses that you wouldn't generally want to target, right? Just in general, the Tennessee Titans, the Miami Dolphins without Tua, they're tough teams to target. Obviously, the Dolphins with Tua, you want to target. But the problem with this Dolphins team, and they're obviously starting Tyler Huntley, so different quarterback, but it's so predicated on timing, tight windows. These guys are so fast that you have to have chemistry with these receivers. And that's why I think Tua, I make fun of Tua all the time. I don't really like him as a quarterback, but he could run this offense because he had that chemistry. He had that timing down to get the ball to these guys in those tight windows, even if it wasn't always deep down the field, which I know we made fun of him for because he doesn't throw the best deep ball, but it still gets there sometimes. Like, it worked. And the problem is that we saw it with Thompson, who had time in this offense, but there's a difference between having time in the offense and working with these receivers, right? And having chemistry with the top receivers, Tyreek Hill and Waddle, and it just wasn't there. I don't understand how Huntley, who I do think is better than Thompson, is going to have that chemistry with being on this team for, not much time. Like, I don't understand how that. So the way he gets there, in my opinion, would be rushing. If he gets there rushing, it's not going to help any of the other guys. It's not going to help Tyreek Hill have a ceiling game. It's not going to help Jalen Waddle have a ceiling game. or it's going to take away from Devon Achane having a ceiling game. So it literally hurts all the other guys. Let's say if he rushes in 1 touchdown, because he's not really a great like pocket passer or anything like that. He's more of a rusher that can game manage the game. So in a lower total game, this does suit him. And I think that Miami could win this game. I wouldn't be shocked if Miami won this game. I think it has to stay under for them to win this game. I think if the total were to go over, that's advantage actually Tennessee, in my opinion. But yeah, it makes it tough here. But I will say Huntley's projection right now is close to the other top QBs, Jared Goff and Geno Smith, which is interesting to me. I mean, I think Geno's the clear number 1 quarterback, but it's got to just be the rushing upside in this offense, so it'll be interesting to see how the ownership shakes out on the quarterbacks and in the game in general. I know it's going to be lower. It's just like how much for someone like Tyler Huntley compared to Geno and Jared Goff.
Big T, with respect to this Miami offense, you have to think that Huntley being on the team for 2 weeks now, they're going to simplify that playbook, right? They're going to cut that down. They're going to give him 10 to 15 plays. Here's what you run. In terms of how to attack this team from a DFS perspective, you've now got Devon Achane at 7,200. Like I said, Mostert questionable at 5,700. Tyreek 7,900. So it seems like in a 37 total game, it's hard for Achane and Tyreek Hill to get there in the same game script, right? If this game goes under, this game would have to shoot out, and the biggest impediments to it shooting out are Tyler Huntley's only been there a couple of weeks, and Tennessee likes to play at a very, very methodical, deliberate pace, which means that that's going to bring down the total of possessions. What are you thinking about this game? What are you looking at for the 2-game classic slate?
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting too. Like you guys said, with the lower total, higher total, ownership in different spots. But you have teams like Miami that do not have a lot of weapons. So that's good and bad. Like it's a low total for a reason because they don't have that many guys. But the guys they have, you could at least make a case for just crazy volume, like dump offs to both Tyreek Hill and Achane. Both of them could, in theory, catch like 10 passes each. Just a bunch of like dump offs that, like you said, simplify the offense. The way I would simplify the offense is get the ball in these guys' hand, throw it to tight ends like Jonnu Smith, get it in his hands. And they just don't have that many guys to choose from. So in a way, even if it's a low scoring game, I think they could get there more so than some other spots. But then again, like the ownership, it's still a 2-game slate. Like it depends on what we think guys like Tyreek are owned. Like he just can't be owned. The way you line it up and start like building teams, it's really hard to click Tyreek Hill when you look at his numbers and you look at the projection and the price, which then in theory brings him back into play just because if people aren't going to play him, it reminds me a little of the Cincinnati slate last year on a 2-game slate where everyone was like playing Poku or who was on it? Who was on
Puka.
Puka.
Yeah.
Puka was on it, and there was one other guy too, though. Puka and I can't remember. It doesn't really matter. There was 2 guys and another spend up though, and then Jamar Chase, and like no one played Jamar Chase because it was a weird spot. They were the pricing was he was like
was
way
Joe
higher
Burrow
price.
out too? Was Joe Burrow out?
I don't think Burrow was out at that point. He might have been though. It doesn't matter though. Like so, I think like on a 2-game slate, it just matters so much what you think Tyreek is going to be owned. Because if he's like somehow higher owned just because of the name, for what part, William? If he's going to be higher owned, then I mean it would be the easiest fade of all time. And this is just funny how DFS works, though. And you guys both tournament players, you guys know what I mean. Like if he's like even 25% owned, I think it's a terrible play. But if he somehow comes in at like 10% owned on a 2-game slate, where he can catch 10 passes and break one to the house with ease, he's got to be the best play on the slate. It's just funny how that lines up. And I tend to think he's going to be more on the low owned side than the high owned, just because, like you guys said, starting, I know we're not talking about that game yet, but Geno's going to be the top quarterback, at least projection-wise and price-wise, and he's got clear guys you can throw it to. So everyone that plays Geno is going to want to play, I would probably even say 2 of those receivers or tight ends, 2 pass catchers. So immediately on this slate, one thing you could do to be different, which sounds crazy to even say, is only play 1 Seattle pass catcher. Like, that's like normal on most slates, but on this slate, I think it's a pretty good way, which brings Tyreek and Waddle into play for me a little more than they probably should be, just because they both have upside. And I think both of them have to be low owned. And Huntley, even though he's only been there a couple weeks, he's still a veteran. He can run. I probably like Miami more than I should in this spot. And it doesn't feel good because if it goes wrong, it could go very, very wrong. But I'm okay with that.
So let me go back to JSU, because the point you made, right, about Cam Akers against Jacksonville, we generally do not target Jacksonville with running backs. There was a price point and a way the teams looked, right? 5.5-point favorite, $5,300 running back, stepping in for a guy that was getting a ton of volume. Didn't happen. Game went the other way. You look at the point that Tony's making here, the ownership on Miami that I'm looking at shows Devon Achane 3 times as owned as Tyreek Hill, okay? And he's only $700 cheaper. So if this game plays out differently, and let's say Tennessee smartly stacks the box and says, hey, we're going to make you beat us, well, that's tough for Devon Achane too. Now, he can get involved in the passing game, but the earlier point, we generally don't like to use running backs against this Tennessee defense. We haven't the last couple of years. They play slow. They play good up front. They play good in the middle of the field, but they have been a pass funnel, and it has been a place to target the receivers. The field is not looking at it that way. The field is looking at it like Tyler Huntley sucks. He's their 3rd quarterback. The Titans are favored by 2.5, not even taking into account this game is Miami, and not focusing on the best weapon on any of these teams on this 2-game slate, which is Tyreek Hill. What are your thoughts on that? Just amplifying Tony's point.
So just to be clear, I think one of the there's 2 reasons why people are looking at this Tennessee defense and saying, I don't want to target pass catchers in this spot. One is the obvious. It's the quarterback. It's the fact we just saw this Miami offense with a different quarterback, but a backup, and it didn't look good, right? And it was just bad in general. The other thing is right now, and I just want to double check this, but right now in the last, what was it? I think it was 1, 2, let's see. So in the last 3 weeks, this Tennessee team, and it could be some to do with the matchup against receivers, though, they're pretty much like giving up the least amount of points fantasy-wise to receivers. So I think that is another reason it's not as much of a pass funnel as it used to be. They did get some help in the secondary, and I think it's showing this year with their defense being a little tougher against receivers. And you're right, they've always had good interior linemen, Jeffrey Simmons. They drafted another young kid, I can't remember his name right now, but that interior line for Tennessee is really tough. So running inside is tough. The way you got to be able to run the football is on the edges, outside. You got to have speed, which Miami's running backs do. To be clear, they do. But the one thing that Miami has struggled with this year, and this is the big difference from last year, I feel like no one's talking about it, but the biggest difference between this year and last year to me with this Miami team is clearly their offensive line when it comes to run blocking. Last year, they lost a couple offensive linemen in free agency, I'm pretty sure last year or this past year, and their offensive line is affected from that, and they're not playing as well when it comes to run blocking, and I think it's hurting Miami a lot. Last year, they just physically dominated people up front. That's why Raheem Mostert had like 20 touchdowns and Achane had however many touchdowns. It was because they were so good on the ground. This year, they're just not as good on the ground offensively, and I think it's killing their passing game. It was even hurting Tua before he got hurt. It was hurting Tua's overall performances. And I think that makes it even harder of a spot, JT. So just to, kind of talk about that point, I think those are some of the reasons why people are apprehensive about touching Miami pieces. But to Tony's point, that's just going to keep, besides Devon Achane, everyone else's ownership really low, and they don't have many guys. Like, all their backups are injured. So I know people in the chat are saying it, like, there's, like, at least one of these Miami pieces could go off, and there could be two, maybe. Tyler Huntley could give Tyreek Hill an 8 for 80 game and a touchdown. And on a 2-game slate, 8 for 80 and a touchdown, that puts you in the winner. Like, Tony, if I told you Tyreek Hill had 8 for 8, didn't get 100 yards, but got 8 for 80 and a touchdown, I mean, 8 for 80 might put him on the winner, to be honest.
So let's just talk about the Titans and holding receivers down, right? So let me go through the 3 games they've played. The first game of the year against Caleb Williams, making his first start, Keenan Allen goes down somewhere in the second half, right? Second game against Malik Willis, starting for Jordan Love, and Malik Willis ran all over the Titans, all right? And then last week against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, who, when they're playing teams other than the Patriots, look like what we thought Aaron Rodgers and the Jets were going to look like, right? Aaron Rodgers looks like a 40-year-old coming off an Achilles. So I think I would say Tyreek is easily the best receiver that they've faced so far. Jalen Waddle probably easily the second best receiver that they've faced.
But JT, your point is making the point that I just made, which is it's the quarterbacks, it's the fact that who they're facing, but they're facing another one of those teams because they've got a new quarterback. It's not fair. If Tua was in this spot against the Titans, I'd be 100% with you. I'd be like, listen, this is who they faced. I can see why the numbers are so low because of who they face. But they're getting another Malik Willis. Tyler Huntley is just another Malik Willis. He's just a little more of a vet. He's gotten to work behind Lamar. He's played in some big games, by the way.
He's a little better passer. I think he's a little better passer.
He might be a little bit of a better passer. I did out his I posted on my Twitter 12 games where Tyler Huntley either started or played a majority of the game, and I put out all of his rushing numbers. He's went over his prop, by the way, at DK Sportsbook is 30.5. He's went over that number 8 of the 12 games. And 7 of those, I think he went for 40 plus. But, he's a running quarterback. He doesn't have a ton of 200-yard passing games. Obviously, that's the way they play. They play slow, methodical. He's going to game manage, and he's going to try and keep this game 16-13. You know what I mean? Which is another reason. If there's less touchdowns, less opportunity for scoring in general for those guys. So all these things, the way you'd like it is if you like the over. Like, I don't know if you like the over. It kind of sounds to me like you might like the over.
Well, when the total comes down 9 and you're looking at it, you're saying, well, Will Levis has played terribly. He's turned the ball over the most of any quarterback in the NFL. You've got the third string quarterback here. But Levis has showed sparks in the past. He hasn't this season, obviously, right? He's had good games. Miami's defense hasn't looked great. I mean, Buffalo torched them. Seattle did a good enough job. That game was slow and ugly because it was in Seattle. But, yeah, I see paths where this goes easily. I see paths where this is easily the more exciting game.
Yeah, that's a hot take. I'll give it to you. That's a hot take. Tony, you think this could be the highest scoring game on the slate?
No. I mean, I struggle with seeing point. I do think it could have volume, though. Like I was saying in the first part, like, I think there's guys that can volume into it. But, man, just the more I'm looking at, like, because JT was talking about the Titans stuff, I looked at their first 3 scores while you guys were talking and stat. I mean, they might be arguably the worst team. I mean, they are really bad. When you start, we're talking all about Miami so far, and I'll kind of flip us to the Tennessee side because I'm going to go into it. I mean, they might be really bad.
You would have said, here's the thing with the NFL, though, right? We're talking about how this is a different season. It's a little bit of a trickier season so far to prognosticate. You would have said the same thing against Jacksonville yesterday. You would have never played Lawrence.
But it was the spread, though. The spread was that trappy number. We don't.
This is a 2.5. This went from a 4-point Miami favorite to a 2.5-point Tennessee favorite. Like, should Tennessee
Miami's favored? Miami's
or 4-point the other way.
No, I went a 1.5.
I'm going to double check.
Tennessee wasn't favored in Miami. If they posted that, it
came down 4 to Miami. My bad. 4-point split, not 6.
Yeah. So, I see it. The more I think about it, this is why I love doing shows with you guys too, because I can process it as I go, and I don't like to look at it before these shows. The more I think about this game, the more I think it's just going to be a disaster out there. The more I listen to you guys and the more I process it, I started like thinking I was going to like Miami more than and then I started thinking about the next game, and I'm like, kind of their strengths don't line up with the other team's weaknesses. So I just feel like the next game, everyone's going to feel that way too, though. So it's not like I'm saying anything different. But like the Titans side, I mean, how can we play these guys?
I mean, I think you can play the running backs. If you look at it, Miami's given up 5 touchdowns to running backs in the first 3 weeks. All Tennessee wants, they want to run the football. If this game is low scoring and Tennessee is up by a little bit, they're just going to pound the rock. And you've got Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. And we talk about it on these 2-game slates all the time, Tony. And I know it didn't happen last Monday, but Austin Eckler, if he doesn't get hurt, like he could have been there could have been 2 running backs. I know it wasn't the winner, but there could have been 2 running backs from one team on the winner. It was very possible on last slate, and you could see that again. But
that was Washington's offense, though, and they're a juggernaut.
That's true. Right now. But Miami's really bad against the run. I want one of these running backs. Like I think one of these running backs from Tennessee does good. But I agree with the rest of your point in general. But that's how I can play one. So you got to play at least one guy. You got to play at least 1 or 2 from this game. So.
Well, this game, yeah, but I don't have to play 1 or 2 from Tennessee.
That's true. Yeah, you could play them all from Miami.
I mean, the problem, though, that's why the 2 games, there's just so much game theory, and I always feel bad because I take us a different direction. But the running back is bad. I mean, you got like Detroit is a 2 running back obviously system. In Seattle, you never want to play running backs against Detroit. They're definitely a team that shuts down the run. They don't want to let you run. So all of a sudden you got 2 guys one way. You can't really play at least I mean, Seattle, like Kenny Walker is going to be 40-50% owned, and I don't really want to play guys. So then all of a sudden, yeah, I mean, you almost have to play a Tennessee running back just to fill out your roster. And that also boosts Achane too, in my mind, where the running backs in this game, I feel like are the better plays of the slate, which is weird because I don't like this game, but it does give a natural like roster construction where you play running backs and defense in this game and then kind of go passing game in the second. But then again, how do you get different on a 2-game slate? I like Spears more than Pollard for sure, though, like the chat's saying, especially if I think Miami wins, which I do think Miami wins. But, I mean, Pollard's the one I struggle with. Like, I watch him, and I just feel like I'm watching just a corpse out there.
Like the chat saying, JSU just said, I really like Pollard at 13% owned on Sabre. He's like the chat said, I love Spears.
I wanted to, you just said about the thing, too. I wanted the one guy asked the question about the percentages. So the sheet I posted on Twitter is just Sabre Sim numbers. Those aren't my numbers. That's just the Sims. So I just literally ran it like just the Sims. So that's not my personal numbers.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk about game 2. Then we'll go position by position, which we like to do here on these Monday shows, the Print Factory. But I just want to talk generally about these games because it does seem, JSU, to the point we're all making, right? This Seattle-Detroit game is going to be very owned. Outside of maybe Devon Achane, no one's going to be on Tennessee whatsoever, right? Tennessee's getting no ownership, 13% for Pollard, 8% for Spears. But we go into the Seattle-Detroit game. Everyone knows about the game 2 years ago that absolutely shot out. But these teams are different now. The defenses have evolved a little bit. Some of the pieces in Seattle, namely head coach, a lot of different coordinators there. And it just seems like they really want you to play 2 of these pieces of Seattle, just because Kenneth Walker, 6,300. DK Metcalf, 68. JSN, 55. Lockett, the third man now, clearly could change at any time, is 5K. Then you look at the Detroit piece, and to the point I made earlier, with Detroit, it used to be a couple of years ago you got to play Amon-Ra St. Brown. You play Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're going to win every slate. You're going to do well every slate because he was the lone guy. Well, he's not anymore. And not only is he not the only wide receiver because you have Jamison Williams, but now you have two running back number ones. You have two guys who on a lot of teams in this league would be getting bell cow usage. Plus, you've got one of the only, I would say, maybe top 5 tight ends in the game right now in Sam Laporta. He'd been out. Now he's back. So now it's a little bit of guesswork here on the Detroit side of the ball. What are your thoughts? Where are you looking overall? What do you think happens in this game? I'm going to tell you right now, I would not be surprised if this game maybe met the number, but was disappointing from a fantasy standpoint just because of the way that some of the production is getting spread around both of these teams right now.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game here because, I mean, there's just so many ways to go, and everyone's going to go to this game.
Let's go, JT. Where's our Braves? I'm back with you, baby.
Oh, now you're back on the
JT.
Braves.
Bring that mojo back.
Notice,
Bring
chat.
that mojo back, JT. Get that smile on your face.
Notice, chat, that Tony has flip-flopped 3 different times on this baseball game on this show.
Well, listen, I want to be
Braves to the Mets, back to the Braves. I mean, JT, I'm just saying, like,
we're over. Listen, here's what I'll say. Here's what I want to highlight. What I want to highlight out of all this is my professionalism, because the Braves went down. I didn't bat an eyelash. I kept going. Obviously, it was tumultuous inside. I was drowning in my own blood while the Braves were melting down. And the Mets fans, wait a second, I'm not done. Hold on a second. I'm speaking, as someone famously said, in chat, they're crucifying me because the Mets scored a couple of fucking runs. Well, guess what? Edwin Diaz fucking sucks. He can't pitch without the trumpets. Where are the trumpets? There are no trumpets in Atlanta, Redmond. Fuck Edwin Diaz.
I got to talk it up too, because
by the way, the trumpets was the best. Nothing was better than Timmy Trumpets with Diaz. That was the best.
I have no idea who's going to pitch tonight. They may bring Stale out to pitch tonight.
You had your chance to talk. You gave your whole tangent. Now I'm trying to talk you up. You were getting crucified. I was going to say this for you. You should have let me say it for you. You were getting crucified in the middle of us. You were like going on a tangent about football. You held your own. You gave the whole speech about football, never even broke stride. I was the most impressed by that. And then you didn't even let me. I was going to stroke you up about it. There you go. Show him. Show Travis. Where's Travis at?
Jonathan Bresnahan now wants to be on my side. After he attacked us, he said that Cam Akers was the easiest fade. All right, fine, Jonathan. You're back in the good graces.
He pulled the big T. That's what we call it. He pulled the big T.
He did. Redmond and I, first of all, I have a lot of respect for the Mets fans. I used to be one, and the Wilpons broke me. I've made it very clear. But yeah, Redmond, you were not taking the early victory lap because you've seen Edwin Diaz at his worst just like a few minutes ago. All right.
He was asking people to stop, shit talking. I do remember him saying that. He was asking people to just stop. So it wasn't Redmond who screwed everyone. But back to the football game here. I like Seattle in the actual game. It's a 4-point spread right now. I know Seattle has faced some suspect competition, and we can say this about a lot of teams in the NFL, but you can only play who's put in front of you. And Detroit, maybe they've had a better, a tougher schedule maybe to this part, but they haven't really looked that great to me. Even in the games they won, and I keep going back to like that Rams game where they lost all the guys and they went to OT, and they honestly should have lost that game. They got outplayed by the Rams. And then like the Tampa Bay game was just whatever. Tampa Bay is a hit or miss team, I guess, but that was a tough look for Detroit. I don't know. They just haven't looked great to me. And I think if I'm getting 4 points from Seattle, who has looked solid, I don't want to make the case that they're like this amazing team, even though their record says obviously undefeated. I don't think they're like as good as that record, but I think they're a good enough team. It stinks that they're losing like 4 starters from the defense. It looks like they could have 4 guys out, couple D linemen, and then some linebackers. So that wouldn't be good if those guys are officially out. You got some playmakers there, and then they've got some defensive players, some backups that are already out. So their defense could be a little thin here, JT. Might make the running game a little better if they've got 2 of their linemen, 2 of their 4 linemen that are out. All in all, I like Seattle as a bet here. I think they have a chance to win this game because Detroit just keeps teams in games with the way they just manage them. And I think it'll be a fun, DFS game. Obviously, we'll talk about it here, but I like Seattle as just a bet.
As everyone in the chat knows, there are certain things about, for those of you like I did years ago, right? Seeing Tony on shows on Roto Grinders and then getting to know him and work with him here. There are just certain things that happen completely out of context when he's not around that just make you kind of giggle at something from years ago. And one of the guys brought this up. I was looking, I hadn't even looked at this lineup for this fucking team. I think he was on Texas. They signed him and brought him up Texas. And I might be wrong about that, but I hadn't even looked at that lineup because I wasn't considering them. But I'm watching the game late at night, and up to the plate steps Matt Duffy. And no batting gloves, no nothing. And he gets in there. I just start laughing. And Big T, it was at this remembrance of how you would love to roster Matt Duffy against left-handers. When he was in the lineup, he was cheap, multi-position eligibility, all these different things. So there's that. I don't know if you had a chance to partake. I know you were busy with the MMA, the college football, of course, the NFL. Did you happen to just make a lineup just because you saw that Matt Duffy was on a roster again and in the lineup?
Part, I don't know. I honestly don't. I don't think it was Saturday, but in the last week. It's funny you bring this up because I swear this is true. I don't remember which day, but definitely last Wednesday to Saturday. I don't think it was Saturday though, because I don't think I played baseball on that college football day. He was in like the 8 or 9 hole.
Yes.
And I was thinking the same thing as you. I don't think I actually clicked him because it was a shorter slate. And like I spent on there was like a really good third baseman on the slate. But I swear I looked at him and I almost clicked him just because of what you're saying. So it is funny. I don't remember.
I don't know why we're laughing. Matt Duffy has won me a lot of baseball cheese, and I know he's won Big T a lot of baseball cheese too. So we love Matt Duffy on this show.
Hey, there are certain players. There are certain players that will always have our hearts. The catcher from the NC Dinos. I can't pronounce his name, but I love the guy. I love the guy. He was very helpful.
Those were the glory days.
Shout out to my boy Buster Posey. Always shipped when I played him at catcher. Literally always. Every time I played him at catcher, I swear to God, I shipped. He was always on my baseball shippers. And
not to go too deep into baseball, but obviously, JSU, we're going to be excited next season because the organizational ideology was flawed in San Francisco, just like it is in Minnesota, just like it is in Tampa Bay. And you're happy to see that guy move on, the organization turn a page. At least I am. Not because I'm a fan of the Giants. I certainly am not. But from a baseball perspective, to see this age of, we can absolutely not let a left-handed batter face a left-handed pitcher.
You're a fan of baseball, though, JT. You're not just like it. We're a fan of sports, right? Yes. I get it. You have your team. Your team's the Braves. It used to be the Mets, whatever. Yes. Tony's got his Bengals that he whacks off to at night. Like we all have and then the Nuggets randomly. I know he was from Denver, so it's not random. But
he's got a Nugget shirt on now. I don't know if
he's got all his fucking teams. And then I have my teams that I put money on. So then I'm like the random fan. Like I'm the random Green Bay / Raiders / Washington guy.
Teams that just run up the middle every play.
I'm that guy. You know what I mean? So it's fine. We're fans of sports. What do you want? Like,
no, we're dead again, JT.
Uh-oh. Travis said to the moon.
So we'll see. It's all right. You got to find somebody to pitch tonight. See what happens.
2 teams. This is unreal.
It's a great game.
The topper of the whole thing is that it's not actually even going to matter because they're both going to win and they're both going to move on.
Maybe. All right. So back to Seattle, Detroit, Big T. What are your thoughts on this game? And then we'll go position by position, talk about who we think is good leverage and who we're going to play in terms of the popular plays.
Yeah, so I just think it's clear cut. like matchups in this game, which is always what I like on 2-game slates and showdowns. Like I said, I just know how Detroit's one of the teams you can predict. It's Dan Campbell. He's going to coach his teams the same way every single time. It's like that thing Belichick was breaking down with all the Shanahan tree, exactly how they coach. Dan Campbell's going to do the same stuff. They're going to try to stuff the run, and they're going to try to run. So you know what they're going to do, which means they almost play into Seattle's hand, which is why I like Seattle with JSU to win tonight, even to win outright, because Seattle wants to throw now. Pete Carroll's not there. Kenny Walker's been banged up, but they got receivers, and Geno can sling it. So they almost play into exactly a perfect matchup, and football is all about matchups, obviously. So I think it plays perfectly into them. The hard part, like I said, that I struggle with the slate is everyone is going to play Geno with 2 or even 3 of these pass catchers. And honestly, for me, it's hard not to. I mean, because I really like Noah Fant as a tight end. Obviously, I like DK Metcalf, JSN. I mean, Lockett's the one I don't like, so I won't play him as much. And Lockett's going to be like 50% owned too, just because he's 5K. He fits on this slate. So how do you get different overall? You got to start fading a few pieces. So Lockett, I don't like that much. And like I said, Kenny Walker, I don't love either. But I think the matchup, just speaking matchup, not talking ownerships or anything, I think it's a clear-cut matchup for Seattle passing game and for Detroit passing game. So I can see how the last couple of years when these teams have played, it's been a shootout just because it matches up that way. Like I know Amon-Ra has struggled a little bit, but I think he's clear-cut number 1 on this slate because I think Seattle's going to try to stop the ground game too. They know Detroit wants to run. I think both teams are going to stuff the run, which leads me back to the running backs in the first game, which we already talked about. I don't need to go down that avenue again. But I think it's clear-cut. Like receivers, pass catchers in this game, runners in the first game, and volume in the first game from some of those guys. So I like Seattle a lot. I like points the more I think about it, just because I think both teams match up good to pass here.
All right.
By the way, too, just one other thing to throw in to just make – so Seattle, obviously they've been a decent defense, but when you lose so many guys, especially at linebacker and on the D line, they have the 3rd best pressure rate of any team in the NFL through 3 weeks. That has to go down a little bit when you have, if you have this many guys out of the starting lineup, which makes it a lot easier for a team to pass against you. And it makes it a lot harder for the secondary to cover you if they have to cover longer. It's a lot easier when you're getting constant pressure, when you have one of the top, pressure rates in all of the NFL, because that's less time you actually have to defend in the secondary, right, JT? It's a lot easier when it's less time, but when you have to defend a little longer, it makes it a little tougher. So I agree with Tony's assessment on the receiving game. It might not be the clear matchup, but I think it is in this spot, and it's even better if you have that many guys out on defense. I think it makes it for an even better spot.
All right. So we'll start now and just go position by position here, cover the 2-game slate. We'll start at quarterback. Geno Smith, 5,900. He looks like he's going to be about 35 to 40% owned. Then after him, it's Jared Goff, 6,400, 24%. Huntley, 5,500, 20%. And then Will Levis, 5,200, 19%. JSU, I'll stick with you. It sounds to me like, obviously, there's going to be a lot of ownership on the quarterbacks in that Detroit game. Are you siding with Geno Smith or Goff as your highest owned guy this evening? And then any reason for you to really consider going over either of the quarterbacks in that first game?
Yeah, I'm Geno over Jared Goff. And it just drives me nuts. But Detroit, when they get down in the red zone in the goal line situations, they're still going to run the football. And so it's just, I'm going Geno Smith here. I don't like, this is like the worst spot for his running backs against Detroit. So I think it's a Geno Smith night. The other quarterback that I would potentially think about playing, and it's more of an ownership thing, but it would be Tyler Huntley, just because he does have that rushing, upside, I guess. He can get you 40, 50 yards rushing. which is huge on a slate like this. But he's also like priced up close enough to where people aren't going to want to play him. So his ownership is going to be extremely low. Like Jared Goff and Geno Smith are going to by far be the highest owned guys. I don't know what the ownership will shake out to be exactly. Well, I don't know, Tony, is it 50-30 on those guys? Like, are they going to garner 80% or 70% of the ownership?
I don't think so. I don't necessarily agree. I think it's going to be Geno for sure, but I don't think Goff won. I think Geno's going to get maybe all of that you're talking about. I don't think Goff's going to be around Huntley for sure to me, and Levis. I think it's Geno and then everyone else.
So you're saying Geno could be like 60% owned?
He's only projected 40, but I just think he's going to be higher.
Interesting.
Even in the Sims, even I'm getting like 50%. So and honestly, I don't disagree with it. So I kind of like just think Geno's the best play.
He's the clear number one play. Yeah. I like if you want to give a number two play, that's fine. But
I mean, I got one for you though. Like last year, we had some of these 2-game slates where me and you did the show, and I think JT might have even done the 2-game shows with us. But one of our ways to get different immediately was Geno with the D. Like people don't do that. Like right away, you just play the Detroit D with Geno, and you're different.
Yep. All right. Exactly.
So moving on to running back, this is where there's some interesting ways, at least, to get a little bit different. You've got Devon Achane at 59%, showing 59% ownership at 7,200. Gibbs and Montgomery, 45 to 50% apiece, it looks like. Kenneth Walker at 38%. Pollard and Spears, we talked about 13 and 8% apiece. Everyone else just getting some crumbs there, Big T. I think one of the best leverage ways to go on this slate is to go not with HM, but with Tyreek. What are your thoughts here at the running back position?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the leverage for sure. Just because, I mean, like I said, people just can't fit Tyreek. If people play Geno, if people play Geno, they're going to play. I know I keep saying the same thing, but it's just how I process it. They're going to play 2 or 3 pass catchers. You only have so many. They're going to want to run some Detroit pass catcher back. They're just not going to play Tyreek Hill. So I totally agree with you on the leverage spot. And Achane too, I just feel like everyone's going to click him. I know it only says like 60% ownership, but I think it could even be high. It's just an easy fit. Like you play those other game passers, you play Achane, I think we'll be a little different with the Tennessee. Like Spears, for me, just talking running back too, it fits the price I want where it's cheaper. If they're behind, he could catch dump offs. I just love how Spears checks all the boxes for me. Achane, the problem for me is I still think it's going to be a floor slate. So like the 2 highest scoring running backs, I think are going to be in the winner, the quarterback that scores the most. I don't think price is going to matter as much with the way this sets up. So do I think Achane is a top 2 running back? Probably just based on volume. I mean, what's his catch prop? Does anyone, without me actually looking it up, because somehow I still have no cell signal. Verizon's like down across the country.
Who are you looking for?
I don't even know what Achane's reception prop was.
His reception prop? Let's see.
I mean, he's going to just volume like crazy, but I also don't think he crushes, which opens up leverage.
So it's sitting right now at 3.5 minus 115 over under.
It's only 3.5 for him. Wow.
Yep.
I don't see how he doesn't. I mean, how does he not get more than that? Seriously. But I mean, that's one way to get. I totally agree with JT about the Tyreek, and there's plenty of running backs on this slate. I don't like Kenny Walker and Charbonnet, but I mean, they still could get touchdowns. So I was looking at the box score the last time these teams played, and they totally shut down Kenny Walker. He had 40 yards on a bunch of carries, but he scored twice. So there's nothing that says you can't get a PI on the one, get something down in there and just run it in. It happens all the time. So even though I don't think the matchup is good at all, he could still score. So you have options. Who's the pass catchers is another difficult part on this slate. So you got Achane and Gibbs catching, but like you just said, the prop is only 3.5. that makes me like him even less, honestly. Like me personally, I think it's an overplay, but they're not that scared. There's no juice on the over, really. It makes me think he's a worse play, and I tend to be more on JT's side of maybe trying to leverage this situation a little bit. And I know JSU talked about it in the first segment. What if you really got different and played Pollard and Spears together as your two running backs, which I don't like on the surface, but again, it's a 2-game slate. You got to do something to be different, and we've seen 2-game slates where running back, the highest scorer of all of them is like 8 or something weird. That's not going to happen here because there's too many pass catchers and stuff. But what if only one guy scores double digits? I mean, it could happen. It's a 2-game slate. It could easily happen. And on top of it, you got teams that want to shut down the ground game. So it could happen even more so. So I don't know. I like Spears the best. And honestly, I don't really like any other running back. So I'm open for getting creative at running back.
Yeah,
Jason,
that's my problem.
People in the chat have talked about wanting to play Charbonnet. The challenge here is Kenneth Walker is the number 1 running back. He's only $100 more than Charbonnet. So even if you think that Charbonnet still takes some 20-25% of the share, you're paying an absolute premium at $6,200 for him. What are your thoughts here on the running back position? Another note on
one thing about Charbonnet, for your point, is he's literally going to be 1% owned. Like literally.
Yeah. One other thing about Miami in that game against Seattle, their game plan was to give the ball as often as possible to Achane and try and hide Skylar Thompson. It didn't work out too well, so they may also be looking to have a shift in philosophy here and say, all right, we have to get the ball into Tyreek's hands. But what are your thoughts on the running back position?
Yeah, and I don't know if I didn't see this, but Mr. Greg saying Achane's over 3.5 was plus 115 this morning. Now it's moved to minus. So yeah, there's that.
Well, but what does that reflect though? Because the field believes that it's Achane, right? So that's maybe a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's got to have to be him." He is also priced at the absolute close to his ceiling at 7,200.
Yep.
How is that prop not a lock? Seriously, how is that thing not a lock to go over?
Injury.
That's
Raheem Mostert being back.
Yeah, but Raheem Mostert's most likely out though, right?
I still
would like it a lot less if he was somehow in.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I mean, he got 7 targets the first 2 weeks, 5 last week, but it was a blowout last week too. I don't understand that line. That feels like a free winner, honestly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Again, these props they're pretty rough in this game just in general. So if you're looking at your props, but maybe you can take advantage of some of these things here because they are lower than usual. I mean, Tyreek Hill's over 4.5 and is plus money right now. I mean, it's minus 135 to the under for 4.5. Like normal Tyreek Hill numbers are way higher. So, you're going to get lower numbers on these guys. But yeah, it's the Tennessee side. It's the Tennessee running backs for me. I don't want to just say everything that Tony said because we kind of now agree on that point. So like the Miami side, the only thing would be like maybe you just get cute and play one of these guys like a Tyreek Hill. And it's not cute, but if he's going to be that low owned, he could theoretically volume his way to the winner. So like he's the only one that I see from the pass catchers that I can even play. I like this kid, Malik Washington. I like what I saw in preseason. He's questionable. They only have all their other guys are out or on IR, like Craycraft and Du Bois and Beckham and all these backups. So they're literally going to have to bring up like practice squad guys like Eskridge and others if Washington's out. But he's stoned 3K and no one's going to play him. But that's probably more a showdown type play if he's even in and get a little cute there. But there's not much I see passing wise on the Tennessee side. I don't really like Hopkins. Tyler Boyd's running a ton of routes right now. He's not really doing a ton with them, but he did run the most routes of any of the receivers last week. He's 4,200 here. It's just, I think it's more a running spot for these guys than it is, but it's the same situation. Like if you're trying to catch like a low-owned guy, I mean, Tyler Boyd's out there and he's running a ton of routes. So, that's a good sign. D-Hop looks, he's tough. He had one big game, but other than that, he's been slowed down. Maybe it's Boyd at 4,200 inside. Like maybe he's someone we could play at low ownership. You probably got to play like, two guys from this game. I know you don't want to pick a Tennessee guy, but maybe he's one that we could, throw in there in some MME stuff. So yeah, not a ton, but that's what I'm seeing right now.
Big T, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown with the highest ownership here, more than double the ownership that's going to be on Jamison Williams. Then you're going to have the next highest owned guys being, looks like Jackson Smith Njigba, is how you say his name, at higher ownership just because of the price. And then right behind him, DK and Lockett, Tyreek, Waddle, then essentially everybody else. What are your thoughts here at the wide receiver position?
Yeah. So for me, I think receiver is more clear cut than the rest of the slate. And I'm going to treat it that way, honestly. Like, I think Amon-Ra is just a lock on this slate. Like I said, it's just a point slate for me. So even if he was to get like 15 or something, I feel pretty good that that's got a chance to be on the winner. I don't think it's a lock to be on the winner at 15, but I do feel pretty good that he's on the winner. And that's like a floor game for him, I think. I don't really see him.
It got a
little hairy there with
stop. It was really close. Really close. Whatever.
Oh.
You can't get canceled on this show anyway.
Who gives a fuck? We don't get canceled on this show.
Come on.
But and then these Seattle guys, like, for me, it's easier than some because I just am not playing Lockett. Like, if Lockett beats me, I'm just okay with it. I'll live with it. And I just love DK and JSN. So and Fant for that matter. So I just think receiver is very clear cut. And just to narrow it down, so like Tennessee, I mean, there's no way I'm really playing Ridley or Hopkins. I mean, Boyd, like if I needed to make a team work, like I honestly think I would rather just roll the dice on a 4K running back than Boyd, though, just to be totally different. Because Boyd's going to be like 25%, like a Jeff Wilson or something, because I hate running back. So I just would rather play receivers that I think can have upside. So I just don't think I'm going to play these Tennessee guys. Miami, I mean, obviously Waddle and Hill are kind of leverage plays because both of them are going to be under 20% owned. And I honestly, the more I think about it, the more I like the build. And I haven't built the team, so I don't know if you can play DK, Tyreek, and Amon-Ra in the same build. I'm sure you can if you get creative. But that's something I'm pretty interested in. Playing those 3 stud receivers, you got all the upside and you got the floor. Tyreek is tough, though. His props are super low. I don't see them throwing he's going to have to house one, I think, because I don't think he can volume his way to the yardage. But all it takes is one freaking play with him, too. He's gone. Like, could be the first play of the game and he's gone. So, I don't know. I'm torn on that one. And then, like I said, Detroit – it's nice, though, because I'm not going to play Tim Patrick, and they only got 2 receivers. You got Amon-Ra, who I want to play, and J-Mo with the upside's only 5,600. So you got 2 receivers from Seattle, 2 from Detroit, and 2 from Miami. I got 6 receivers basically for 4 spots in my mind because I don't like running backs. So there's not that many combos I can – because I'm not going to play both Miami guys together either under any circumstance. So then all of a sudden I'm down to only 5 receivers for 4 spots. This is just how I look at 2-game slates. I narrow the numbers down. And if I have to get creative at running back, especially on this slate where I think the chalk is super condensed, I'm okay getting different at running back. I really am the more I think about it. Or you could play, as we get to tight end next, something creative like that. But I want 4 receivers. I think receiver has upside here. And I was trying to pull up these running backs. So, like, super cheap running backs, though, I am kind of okay with it here. You got guys coming back from injury like Kenny Walker. Achane's always susceptible. Again, I'm not casting that out there, but it happens on these slates where a guy gets injured. What if he gets hurt in the first quarter? Well, Jeff Wilson would be 100% owned. And yeah, we're not banking on an injury, but he could score a touchdown even. They could get inside the 5. I've seen it happen a zillion times with Shanahan offenses. Achane runs it down, gets tired. They bring Jeff Wilson in for a touchdown. He's 4,300. Jalen Wright even could get some work at 4,200. I want to take more chances at running back than receiver. I think receiver is very easy for me.
All right. At the tight end position, the tight end's been a mess all season. Every single team, at least Travis Kelce finally seemed to get on track yesterday. Of course, unfortunately, that came after Rashee Rice went down. But the tight end ownership looks like it's going to be Noah Fant is the highest owned tight end. It's got to be Price at 3,500, followed by Laporta, the backup or the number 2 tight end for Tennessee. This Josh Wiley. And then you've got basically everybody else. Tony, we'll stick with you. I don't necessarily have a strong lean here other than I don't really want a ton of Noah Fant if he's going to be 35% owned, being the 4th option on this team, maybe the 5th option on this team. What are your thoughts at the tight end position?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a lot of good points, and we've seen our boy Wiley ship Showdown last night. He ships the 117K on Bama, and now we got a name pop up for 2,500 named Wiley. I mean, we have to at least think about that a little bit. So I was diving into him a little deeper while you guys were talking a minute ago. 46% of the snaps and 42% the last 2 weeks. I don't love a ton, and I mean, I tend to agree with JSU a little bit on that, where I want to play probably 2 pieces from the first game, like 1 piece from each or 2 from one, like that. That's pretty much where I'm at. I don't want a ton, but a 2,500 tight end goes a long way. And JT brings up a good point about Fant. I like Fant, but man, if he's really going to be 40% owned and I like the receivers, why not just punt the tight end where I can play? I do think Wiley's going to get some ownership, but that doesn't matter. Like, you're just going to be somewhat different by doing that. And I like him. I like Chig. And I think JT might have talked me into fading Fant more than I was planning on it, because it's still Noah Fant. Like, if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's not getting in the winner. So I don't need Fant. And I really love DK and JSN. So that's just a clear-cut build for me. And Laporta's a little too expensive for me with how injured and banged up he's been. Don't get me wrong. Laporta, if you can fit him, obviously I would play. He's the one that could like get 10 or 8 and be in the winner, because there's a good chance none of these tight ends get more than 6 or something. So Laporta could honestly be in the winner with like 7. But for me, I think you go cheap. And honestly, Farrell Brown too for Seattle. No one's going to play him because he's behind a million pass catchers. But like I just said, the tight end has no upside. If he somehow catches a touchdown at 2,500, I don't mind him. So I think that my 2 favorite plays are actually Wiley and Farrell Brown, just for pure leverage purposes.
Well, I didn't even write Farrell Brown's name down on my sheet. So you definitely are going to be different there, no doubt. JSU, thoughts here at the tight end position?
Yeah, I think there's 2 tight ends I'm mainly playing, and it's not going to be Noah Fant just because I know he's going to be crazy high owned, and he's still Noah Fant. I get why he's going to be crazy high owned, but he's
Farrell
friggin'
Brown
Noah
played more
Fant.
snaps last week than him.
Yeah, but again, too, it's more about like the routes run and stuff like that, and I think that's where he clearly has, if I remember correctly. Noah Fant, 19 routes run. Where's Farrell Brown?
I mean, look, Seattle also has a tendency to go to that number 2 tight end in the red zone. So I'm not saying that's a crazy play. I'm just saying I look, even myself, I didn't even look at him. So I don't think he's going to have a ton of ownership.
Yeah, he's going to be 0.
Yeah, it's literally going to be the 0.5% that falls Big T into the Farrell Brown.
You got to get different on these 2 games.
I'm just telling you though. That's why he ran 23% or 24% of the routes last game. Yeah. Noah Fant ran, way more. That's the difference between the 2. One's the pass catcher and one's clearly more out there for more blocking. But yeah, I agree with you. All he needs is that 1 catch where he scores a touchdown and boom, you're there. I think you could win with him. Like if all these guys get 6 and he gets 0,
you could still be in good shape just because of that
Yeah.
savings from the top guys.
Yeah, the only way would be like if another 2,500 guy, like the Wiley dude, right, scored 6. Then you're.
And Wiley's going to be
obviously.
way higher owned. I mean, I got Wiley
Yeah.
like 20% owned.
Yeah, and he's one of the guys I'm going to play just because he's 2,500. The routes per routes run percentage has gone up each game. I think 29, 31, and then 38. And Chigs have slowly come down a little bit. So clearly he's eating a little bit into Chig's workload. So 2,500. I'm going to play some of him. But the guy I don't even know if you brought him up, and this is why I'm not as in on the Miami pieces in general, like the stud pieces. I think Jonnu Smith, who it is seemed game dependent, depending on if they get up or down, he plays a little more or less because he's clearly he's a pass catcher, more tight end that they like out there. So like in week 2, when they were down all game, he played way more. He ran way more routes. In the other games, he didn't as much.
Wait, they were down the whole game last game.
Yeah, and he did, but it was closer, Tony. The week 2 game, they were like out of it. That's my point. So he played a ton later in the game. What?
It was 24-3 last week.
Okay, well in week 2, why did he run 27 routes? Again, I don't know. Okay, so maybe it's a different scenario, but to me, there's a reason why, and I think that Tyler Huntley is clear that he likes the tight end spot. Whenever it was in Baltimore, the tight ends were always his favorite, and it could have been more the system. But Jonnu Smith is more of a friendly pass-catching guy. I think he's going to need someone like Jonnu Smith outside of the running backs for just quick passes. So you said he's got to get the ball out quick. Well, Jonnu Smith might be one of those guys. He does too. And he's not going to be owned. He's 3,300. Noah Fant's going to be way, way higher owned. And you just said it yourself. You got to be different especially at tight end. Why not be different at tight end? Even if he's not playing that much, he's 3,300. He needs like 20 yards and a touchdown, and you could be minted on this slate. Like 3 catches for 20 and a touchdown. Boom. That's it. Jonnu Smith probably on the winner unless Sam Laporta just randomly goes off in this spot. So yeah, I'm going to take a shot on Jonnu. Also, too, like DK Metcalf's projection is just way too low. If you're playing Showdown, you should bump DK Metcalf's projection up because he's projected at like 14 or 15. It should be like 18. And the dude's gone for 20 plus in 2 of his 3 games, and his ceiling is ridiculous. He's probably going to go for 100 and a touchdown tonight. DK Metcalf in Showdown. Everyone's going to play JSN. This is just the side thing. JSN's super cheap on Showdown, but DK Metcalf, he's way more expensive. I think he's the 2nd highest price or 3rd highest price. But man, his ceiling is crazy, and he's not going to be owned like it in the captain. So if you're playing Showdown, I know that's the big Showdown slate for tonight. I just wanted to throw it in there that I think DK Metcalf is a really good pivot at the captain spot in Showdown just because of how high owned JSN will probably be because he's so cheap.
All right. We'll finish up here. Position that I think almost nobody wants to talk about, but the way that this game has been this season, if you nail the defense position, you're doing yourself a tremendous favor on a small slate, on a big slate, whatever it is. It was the difference. Someone talked about these smaller slates. It often is the difference on these smaller slates. Getting that defense that gets you on a small slate, 8, 9, instead of 3 or 4. Defenses by ownership looks like it's going to be Miami, and then the Lions, and then Seattle. No one's going to be on the Tennessee defense here. I guess they're still maybe giving Miami's offense a little bit more credit than it deserves after the last couple of weeks. Of course, understandable when you lose your starting quarterback, JSU. Thoughts here on a particular defense for you, or what are you looking to do?
Yeah, interesting. Coming into, I would have assumed like the Tennessee defense would be getting a little more love. I guess they're not. So that's kind of interesting here. But yeah, I mean, Tony brought up a good point of being different by playing Geno with the Seattle defense. That's not crazy. I always like playing the defense in these spots against your quarterback. So like the Lions defense just coming in was one of the defenses. And you just never know what happens. I mean, look at some of the games like where there's just a random like kick, punt, the guy muffs the punt and the defense falls on it in the end zone. Like there's just so many random things that can happen that can set your defense up. And I feel like on these slates, Tony, it's always the defense we don't expect to be in the winner. It's always like one of those two defenses because everyone picks, I think, two defenses, right? Everyone's like, okay, these are the two defenses I'm going to play. And then these are the two defenses I'm just going to nix out. And it's always one of the two that we always don't expect. I'm going to go with Lions and Titans, though, are going to be my two defenses. I'm going to be playing Geno. I might have a sliver of Tyler Huntley, but it's going to be mostly Geno. But again, I'm going to play the defenses against my quarterbacks and take my shot that way. So, yeah.
Big T.
Yep. Falcons yesterday. Perfect example.
Yep.
Bang.
Yep.
2,600 too.
So which one is your favorite defense, JSU?
My favorite defense is gonna be the Lions. It's gonna be the Lions and the Titans are gonna be the two defenses that I play.
All right. Big T, thoughts on defense?
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot what JSU said. It's tough because the clear spots are for sure Miami and Detroit for me, but it's hard because the one you expect least is always the one that does good. So Seattle's going to be the lowest owned tonight for sure, and I like Seattle a lot to win the game. I struggle with so I've always liked this idea with JSU. Like last year, we kind of started hammering it more where quarterback defense. My issue with Detroit, though, man, I think they have a lot of problems tonight. My boy Derek Barnes out. He's been a key part of the middle of that defense. I really struggle, but then again, so I go back and forth because I still agree with it that if they're low owned, I want them, but I don't think they're going to be low owned is the problem. Like looking at their projection, they're favored. I think it might be Seattle for me tonight, and that scares me because I do think they're the weakest. But I want whoever's the lowest owned. If you guaranteed me whoever the lowest, that's who I want to play because I just don't feel that much of an edge. Granted, though, the good part about playing one of the first two Ds, I think there's a lot more room for error. You got bad quarterback play, whereas the second game, I think quarterback play is pretty good, and both teams want to run in the second game. I definitely think the sharp move is to play one of the first team defenses, but Miami's definitely going to be the highest owned at home versus Tennessee. I mean, so maybe it's Tennessee for me. I know I kind of circled around to every D there because I don't have a strong case.
Get on Tennessee. Get on Tennessee.
I think Tennessee could be the play just because Miami, like JT said, he's only been there 2 weeks. He will take sacks because the thing people never talk about the runners, they take more sacks too because they get out and try to do more things. So they tend to take sacks. I think it's Tennessee. I think I talked myself into that.
All right. Tennessee and Seattle dominating the defense, at least here on the Print Factory at Run Pure Sports. It's time to give a play of the day, a play of the slate. A play of the slate, JSU. I'll start. And we talked about this. I talked about this. I'm looking at ownership right now, and it's a 2-game slate. And I know that it's a backup quarterback. I understand the Tennessee defenses look good. Tyreek Hill is going to be the 7th highest owned wide receiver on this 2-game slate. And I just happen to think there's a lot of people at 10:30 tonight that are going to be sitting here saying, I can't believe that I played JSN over Tyreek Hill. That I can't believe I played these Seattle receivers who busted over Tyreek Hill, because I guarantee you that Mike McDonald has spent the last 10 days, 8 days, whatever it is, scheming as much as he can to get the ball into Tyreek Hill's hands. So I'm going to go with Tyreek. JSU, your thoughts, your play of the day.
Yeah, I mean, man, there's so many options here. Which one do I want to steal from Big T? Trying to think about Big T's favorite play so I can steal it from him.
We need to give one like high owned and one low owned anyways.
Yeah,
like,
I like that.
Low owned.
I like that idea. So let's do this. So I'm going to say DK Metcalf is the highest scoring player on the entire slate. I think he drops a 30 bomb here. I think whoever's on the game tonight, like Chris Collinsworth yesterday, blowing Derrick Henry for how upright he runs, is going to absolutely blow DK Metcalf for how upright he runs when he's just running through the secondary and he's just like no one can catch him. My God, people don't know shit about anything. But anyways, DK Metcalf, my favorite play overall. My low-owned play, though, and I was thinking about it, but Tajay Spears, he's going to be the pivot off of all the chalk running backs that are going to get ownership. I like the Tennessee team. In general, I like their running game. I think Tajay Spears is a really good pivot here. He's cheap enough too, but just in general, ownership pivot, 4,900. I'll take it.
All right. DK and then Tajay Spears at 4,900. That is a very, very cheap price for a running back here. Big T, high owned, low. I guess I got to come up with what? I got to come up with a high owned play. I'm going to go with David Montgomery at 47%, just because Seattle news out. They're calling up two players, a outside linebacker and a defensive tackle from their practice squad. So that has to be very, very good news for the Lions rushing attack. Big T, high owned. Who are you pairing with Pharaoh Brown?
I think year two or not. I like your upside of year two, honestly. Like Montgomery and Tyreek Hill have a ton of upside on this slate. I don't think I'll end up with like that path, but I think you might win a lot. I think you might win a lot with that path.
JT, I love your picks today. I'm just not going to play them because they suck ass.
I really like that.
I'm being serious. I'm not even bluffing him. I think
he's the nicest way anyone's ever said, hey, those two picks suck cock, but
no, I agree with it.
That's exactly what he said too. That's the best.
That's not what I said. I actually meant.
I'm gonna go put them in my core right now. While you talk, I'm gonna ignore your plays.
The best part's gonna be in 2 hours when I look at Tony's core and they have fucking Tyreek Hill and David Montgomery in them, and I'm gonna shit myself.
It'll be like The Sims. The Sims changed. The whole thing changed.
You guys are so mean to me. First make fun of me.
It wouldn't be a great show without that. You guys are so mean to me.
But my high owned play for sure is JSN. I love him. I like DK too, but man, I love JSN. You came on with all yellow next week. It would definitely be.
I don't own a yellow piece of clothing, so it would require a shopping spree. But I will tell you this: if my plays bust, I will send Big T a pair of yellow sweatpants to complete his outfit.
Yellow sweatpants. So JSN, my high owned. Wiley's probably too high owned for Pharaoh Brown. Pharaoh Brown's my low owned play. 1% owned.
I knew it.
Yeah.
And who's your high owned?
I said JSN.
Oh,
I don't want to say it because I don't want to get us canceled twice.
You did not give Pharaoh Brown as your low on play. Oh my God.
I was gonna give Wiley, but I wanted to go even lower. I don't know. Wiley might end up high owned.
All right.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be like 20-something%. Yeah. So
Pharaoh's gonna be 1. I'll go 1%. I like Pharaoh Brown.
All right.
I mean.
So there you go. Those are the plays of the day. That is the Print Factory. We will be back here next Monday. I think it'll be a 1-game slate next Monday. So maybe we'll only go an hour and 28 minutes. But for JSU, for Big T, I'm JT. By the way, get into the Discord. You're probably already there. I know Bean Air is there, and many of you other guys are in there. But get in there. Cores are going to be up. People are going to be in the Discord answering your questions. Your 2v2s, your 3v3s, your 4v4s, as usual, will be ignored. But good luck in your contests.